First, so let's bring you back to Canberra. Big day, the first sitting of the 47th Parliament. With me in the studio, my colleague Andrew Clennell. Andrew, we spoke about it at length yesterday. The reason we're talking about it is because the Prime Minister's made a big deal of the climate legislation. Where does it stand as we speak?
Well, Kieran, it now looks likely that the Greens will support the climate change bill that Minister Chris Bowen will introduce to the Parliament tomorrow, although it'll be a couple of months before it gets to the Senate. It was put to me by a Greens source this morning that to say the Greens backing the bill is a possibility is an understatement. Having said that, they're not going to commit to it now because that will get rid of their negotiating position on it, and they do want the government to go further. Specifically, their ambit claim appears to be a moratorium on fossil fuel projects, which the government is never going to go for. The first of the government's concessions to the Greens appeared to have been confirmed this morning, however, with Bowen confirming that the 2030 43% cut in emissions target in the legislation will be a floor, not a ceiling.
As I've said repeatedly, as I said at the press club, as is reflected in our nationally determined contribution signed by the Prime Minister and I, that's a floor, not a ceiling. We hope and expect Australia can do even better than that.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, in brief comments this morning, pleaded with those who might be wavering to support the government's mandate.
I say to all those who are thinking of voting against this legislation, that's a matter for them. We'll get on and implement the policy, which we don't need to legislate for, but they should have a look back at the last 10 years where there's been a lost decade.
So if the legislation were to pass, it suddenly becomes something of a test for the leadership of Peter Dutton rather than Anthony Albanese, because it may well pass thanks to a Liberal like Andrew BRAGG crossing the floor. Lower House Liberal MP Bridget Archer again confirmed this morning she may cross the floor to support the bill.
First and foremost, it's the people of Bass and the people of Bass that have elected me and sent me here to represent them. So I am part of the Liberal Party and I will exercise my voice in that way. But as I have always done, where I believe that the interests of my electorate are served by doing something else, then I'll always exercise that opportunity.
Chris Bowen and Albanese did not miss Dutton this morning. The government sees an opportunity here to wedge the Liberals and Nationals, particularly with the Liberals keen to win back Teal seats at the next election.
Mr Dutton is unfortunately making a decision to continue the climate wars. That's a matter for him, but he'll be held accountable for it. That he's made a captain's call to stand aside from constructive engagement with the government. People who aren't constructive, like the opposition, have made themselves irrelevant to the process.
They need to basically mature a bit, you know, really. They had 22 policies, they didn't land one of them.
We've got an outline of the legislation, which I should point out again, is not necessary in order for the federal government to commit to this target to the UN of 43%, because that's already happened. The government says investors in renewables want this legislation for certainty, and that is why they are doing it, even though the Minister admitted this morning the future Parliament could do anything.
No Parliament can bind a future Parliament, is my first point. My second point is no Dutton government will be good for climate, regardless of what any piece of legislation says. If you want a government that's good for climate, keep re-electing the Albanese government. And
a new Parliament brings new presiding officers. Senator Sue Lines becomes President of the Senate today and Milton Dick Speaker in the House. Could have been an independent Speaker had Anthony Albanese won one or two less seats. Milton Dick taking the chair brings to an end a very short stewardship of a matter of months as Speaker for Liberal Andrew Wallace, Kieran.